Shorty Award for Health goes to a cell biologist, one of the smart ones, who works at the Heart Research Institute in Australia. Wow. Rachael Dunlop. Couldn't be here because Australia's a long way away, but she did send us here her acceptance speech on a slide, and it says, this award recognizes the value of sharing evidence-based health content on Twitter for science, reason, and critical thinking. Thank you. That's nice. Congratulations, Dr. Rachael.
Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Hello and welcome to the Skeptic Zone, show number 72 for the 5th of March 2010. Dr. Rachie here, filling in for Richard and Stefan, and why not? They get too much airtime as it is. On this week's show, we have a real blast from the past. In 2001, Stefan was a DJ on internet radio station Net FM here in Sydney. And one day he invited the Australian Skeptics into the studio, and the rest, they say, is history. This will be followed by me with a report on the Twitter Shorty Awards. And thanks to everyone who voted for me in the health category, which I won on Wednesday in New York. Then we'll have a grain of salt with Eran Segev, talking to some of the people here in Australia who were behind the Apollo 11 moon landings. Sounds very interesting. And after that, Richard takes a critical look at so-called psychic James Van Praagh, who is currently touring Australia and no doubt making a fortune. So wherever you are, in your car, working out at the gym, walking the dog, or just relaxing, I hope you enjoy this episode of The Skeptic Zone.
Let's wind back the clock now to 2001, October 2001, and the very first sort of incarnation of the Skeptic Zone, which wasn't called anything in those days. I turned up at the studios of Net FM here in Sydney, where Stefan Soiker, our co-host, was the DJ. Joining me on the very first skeptical internet broadcast, podcast, whatever you like to call it, was then Skeptics Richard Led and Helen Vanook.
And here we are with Net FM with two. In fact, there's three, but we've got two at the moment because we got two mics and two Richards. We got Richard Led and Richard Saunders from Australian Skeptics Incorporated. How you going, fellas?
Pretty good. Hi.
And we've also got Helen sitting in the corner there, wishing her mic was working, but she's going to come onto the mic probably in the next break. So we'll be looking forward to talking to her. Now, Richard, which one? Let's go for both of you. Tell us about the Australian Skeptics, just briefly.
Okay, we've existed for about 20 years, and we are there to point out some of the absurdities that go on in our society and how people will rip you off and ruin your health and basically take your money because of your lack of critical thinking.
And of course they do. And of course sometimes it's because of your desperate need for some sort of solution to some problem that you've got, I guess.
Yeah, particularly if you're dying of cancer and they'll sell you a machine which contains about $1.20 worth of electronic parts. We've pulled them apart, and that's not an exaggeration. Right. And if you're so desperate you're dying of cancer, you think, well, I'll pay $5,000, maybe it does work. And people who do that to dying people are the lowest of the low.
Exactly.
And there are plenty of people out there who will take advantage.
I bet there are. Well, they take advantage of everything these days, don't they? Everyone's in there for a buck. But the thing for me is that I kind of thought that the skeptics were just more looking at like spoon benders and psychics and things, which of course you do.
We do. I mean, that's... I have to say now, that's really 70s, man.
Oh, man, that was cool when Yuri Geller was coming on TV. Yeah.
And UFOs and all that sort of thing. I think the world has almost grown out of that sort of stuff.
I guess we have, but there's still all those psychic lines, call now and you get your future told for you and all that.
$5.45 per minute. We've infiltrated them. Yeah. And all the people do is read a script. So if you ring up and you have problems with love, you flick to page 20 and start reading the script.
Isn't that
they are
right?
not psychic. It is an outright fraud.
And they keep them on the line. That's the important thing.
But the funny, of course they do. Yeah, it takes about 3 minutes before they even start. Anything happens, all the introductions and music playing and everything. Now,
you have personal experience?
No, I've rung up other lines like that. It's just, I'd say that would be the formula. Actually, I've never have rung one of those clairvoyant lines. Maybe I should, just to be informed.
I've had a client who was sucked into it, and in a 12-month period, he spent $24,000 on telephone psychics.
Oh, my goodness me. That's just absurd, isn't it?
And his business didn't do any better.
No, I bet it didn't. She should have known that psychic woman.
Yes.
Yeah. So, what's the sort of latest things that you've been getting into and exposing?
In the latest journal, The Skeptic, we've highlighted a perpetual motion machine, and
I'd like one of those.
Yeah, wouldn't we all?
So would Sir Isaac Newton and all the world's scientists. All of our laws of physics no longer work. And these people who are based in Queensland, surprise, surprise.
A lot of 4X drinkers up there.
This is true. And they're trying to get money from the public in $500,000 lots, and they reckon they're inundated with people because, of course, this perpetual motion machine generates free electricity.
It's going to work, and we're just going to become multi-billionaires.
And you'll actually be able to sell your surplus electricity back to the grid.
Back to the grid?
Yeah. They don't call it that. They don't call it perpetual motion. They call it
over energy or some
4,000% efficiency.
Is that right?
I'll buy one tomorrow.
Wow, that's unbelievable. It is unbelievable. That's what it is.
Except when you see people, otherwise rational, intelligent people, who fall for these things.
But I guess that is an aspect of human nature, is that our brains tend to do things like that. Like people believe in God, people believe in all kinds of spirits and ghosts and angels, and I mean I've found myself jumping to conclusions about something magical happening. That's the first thing you think is, oh, it's something magical. Then you go, that'd be ridiculous. So it's kind of like our brains have been wired up a little bit to, if you don't use your critical thinking, that you can get sucked in.
We all have a love of wonder. I mean, wouldn't it be fantastic if ghosts really did exist? If a UFO lands and says, take me to your leader, there'll be no happier person than me. I really want it to be true. It's just that all of the evidence that UFOs are contacting us is rubbish. It's fake rubbish.
Yeah.
But if there was good evidence for anything, I mean, from spoon bending to ESPs to Bigfoot to anything you care to mention, if there was good evidence, we would be the first to roll up and say this is great.
Yeah, I know. And in fact, you're offering people a prize money and a spotter's fee. If you can actually, all our listeners out there, if you can find someone who can actually prove anything, you get a spotter's fee of what, $20,000?
$20,000 tax-free, and the psychic, clairvoyant, channeler or whatever
alien
will get $100,000 tax-free.
Do you want the alien, like you want just their head, you want them alive, dead, a bit of skin?
A postcard, maybe.
A postcard from another planet. That would be nice.
You really have to ask yourself, all these UFOs are coming in. 5% of Americans believe they have been abducted by a UFO. You'd have to have traffic lights in the sky to control them.
Phenomenal, isn't it?
So many.
Yeah.
Now, why would they, UFO people, the little green men, travel unbelievable distances across the galaxy to abduct Americans and insert the anal probe, you know where?
I think it sounds like a bit of a fantasy to me. I think they're just dreaming.
They are dreaming.
Hey, I've been nights out like that.
You're watching. Okay, well, I'm going to play another song, and we're going to come back with chat a little bit more. We're going to get Helen on the mic as well. She's new to the fold, I believe, in the managerial role of the Australian Skeptics Incorporated, or Inc. for short, and we'll have a bit more of a chat soon. That is such a beautiful song. I really believe that Faith Hill was channeling angels when she wrote that. Don't you, Richard?
Oh, yes.
Absolutely. Richard Saunders. We've got Richard in from the Australian Skeptics, Inc. and also Helen Panook. Welcome to the microphone.
Thank you.
It's nice to have you here.
Good to be here.
You've been with the Skeptics for how long now?
Well, I've been on the committee for about 1 month, but I've been getting the Skeptics Journal for a couple of years now, I guess.
Oh, excellent. So have you started to get into all the political infighting on the board?
Well, I haven't noticed any of that, just a lot of drinking.
A lot of drinking.
Yeah.
I see.
Then we really see the ghosts.
They're the spirits you really want to get involved with.
That's right.
Well, that's pretty good. So, but I guess from the sounds of speaking, when Richard Led was speaking earlier, there's quite a lot of genuine stuff going on with the society, so with the incorporated organisation,
just Australian Skeptics.
Australian Skeptics, that you're probably going to have quite a good bunch of people there with good ideas and good.
There's a lot of really interesting people involved. I mean, people from all sorts of backgrounds. You know, you've got scientists, but then you've got other people from all sorts of areas who are just interested in critical thinking and exposing the truth and stopping people from being ripped off and drinking a lot.
Don't forget the drinking, yeah. Now, did you find, Helen, maybe when you were younger, not that you're not young now, but when you were younger, that there were things that you kind of found yourself getting sucked in by?
Absolutely. Father Christmas. Up until the age of 10, and which is a really old age to believe in Father Christmas. But
10.
Yeah, I was 10, and when I finally asked my mother, well, Father Christmas is real, isn't he? And I found out he wasn't, and I just cried and cried and cried.
Really?
And I think life hasn't been quite the same since then. I was one of those kids who just loved believing in all those magical things. You know, I'd read all those books about time travel and being invisible, and I loved all that kind of stuff.
Now, if we tell adults today that homeopathy is also in the same vein, they don't cry and cry and cry. They get very upset
because they're adults.
Angry.
They're adults. They're smart. They're logical thinkers, and they know what's right and wrong.
And they're skeptics too. They didn't believe in it at first.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, I can remember when I was a kid, I used to wake up in the morning and I didn't want to get up, so I used to try the Bewitched thing or my favourite Martian. And I tried point and try and get my clothes to come towards me. It never worked. You know, I tried and I tried.
Yeah, I tried, and then you get to about the age of 11 and you realise no, these things just don't happen magically.
No.
But yeah, I guess there are people who still want to keep believing.
Yeah, you'd like to think that it would. Yeah. What about say, for example? I mean, because obviously the skeptics want to disprove a lot of things that are easy to disprove. It's hard. Are there things that are hard to prove in so much as, like, for example, twins that they say, there could be another side of the world, and one goes, oh my God, something's just happened to my twin.
Well, one of the things about the skeptics is we cannot disprove things. We don't go out there to disprove things. If someone says that their Aunt Flo saw a UFO land in their backyard, we can't disprove that.
You want, of course not. You want them to prove it. Right,
indeed.
Which is very hard to do.
And there have been lots of tests conducted with twins, the sort of thing you're talking about, and where they separate them in different rooms and they show different pictures and whatever, and there's nothing. Nothing comes up to suggest that they have a special mental link with each other.
No.
Although, interestingly enough, identical twins will, if they're shown a series of pictures, will tend to choose the same sort of picture.
Of course, because they got the same genetics. Yeah, it's funny because my wife is actually an identical twin, and I've noticed a lot of things where those sorts of things happen, and there's always the inkling is there because there was in like that evidence in the way they spoke 3 weeks earlier that they kind of picked up something was going on, and then when something started going on, it's like, oh, something's going on, I'm feeling something.
Well, people are very quick to make connections between two maybe unrelated events, and if there is a connection to be made, it'll be made in the brain, and the brain will go to lead to all sorts of conclusions, and some of those are magical conclusions.
Yeah, and the thing is with coincidences, if coincidences didn't happen, it would be really strange. Like, there are so many things that happen through life that aren't coincidences that you don't remark on, that you don't tell someone the next day, that you meet someone you have no connection with, that you see a number that has no connection with another number.
Exactly.
But it's just that when something does happen, you remark on it, and things do have to happen. Coincidences do have to happen, just by the law of averages.
Which is actually part of science, is the whole of nature works on chance, and the fact that a million seeds fall onto a footpath, one will fall in the crack, and it'll grow. That's not a coincidence. It's actually, that's mathematically a way that things work, a rule. That's all pretty
good. Can I put in a quick little plug for our website?
Absolutely.
Listeners around the world can check us out at www.skeptics.com.au. And
if you can't spell Skeptics, it's Skeptics. Skeptics.
That's where I was going wrong.
.com.au.
And you can read all about us, and you can subscribe to our journal, The Skeptic.
That's good. Now, one of the good things that you're doing is actually trying to get people busted for being criminally fraudulent and ripping people off. Any sort of latest thing you've done with that?
Well, there's a chap up in the north coast of New South Wales, I think, who was selling magical water.
Oh, yeah, that was
water.
like $80 for a little tub of water.
And it was just, obviously, tap water. And he said if you held up your empty vial, I think it was your empty vial of his magic water in front of his website, it would be empowered again.
Wow.
Away you go.
I'd like to see that. I want to get some of that.
Me too.
Anyway, I'm going to play another song. This is the Careless Ones from Oblivia, which sounds like another appropriate song. Lots of careless people out there. We'll come back again with a few more things to talk about after this little... Oblivia there with the Careless Ones here on Net FM. Stefan with you till 7, which isn't too far away. We're playing musical chairs here. We've got 2 Richards and a Helen from the Australian Skeptics Inc. Richard Laird back on the mic with Helen. How are you?
Still good. Still good.
That's good.
Have not deteriorated.
You sure that there's no sort of negative ions kind of affecting your sort of, substratospheric cellular activity or something?
To quote an expression used by our Prime Minister, no.
Oh, that's good. Now, Richard, if I was wanting you to rip off our listeners, how would you sort of go about that?
Very easily. I'd say to them, I'm importing a shipment of heroin and I need some working capital. I will pay you 100% interest per month.
Mm-hmm.
I have to bribe some officials, I have to, get the boat organised, etc., etc. So if you give me $5,000, I'll give you back $10,000 in a month's time. And in a month's time, I would give you back the $10,000.
Well, I guess, heroin's worth a lot of money.
There is ethics among heroin smugglers.
Uh-huh.
And I'd say, look, I've got a bigger shipment coming in. Can I have the $10,000 back? And do you have any mates who want to make 100% per month?
Okay.
And, because this is going to be a terrific one, I'll give you 100% back in the next month. And lo and behold, at the end of the month, I'd give you back the $20,000. And I guarantee there'd be at least 10 of your friends who'd want to come into it the third time around.
Yeah, right.
And I'd probably keep it going 4 or 5 times. It's called a pyramid scheme, of course. The money given back is just your own money.
Yeah.
And there's new money flooding in. And at the end of it, when I'd made $10, $20 million, I'd just say to your listeners here, by the way, I've just ripped you off, and what are you going to do about it? Are they going to go to Constable Plod and say, I was a drug smuggler?
No. Well, there's a legality there, I suppose.
I've seen it happen. I have seen
it
happen.
With heroin?
There was a guy driving around in a BMW with the boot full of cash about 20 years ago, and he was going around, I won't say the sort of organisations he was going around, but they were wearing uniforms. And he was doing this. He was saying, I am smuggling drugs, I need working capital, and he started off paying various people, the investors, the 100% for the month, and he ripped them off. As I said, he literally had a boot full of cash.
But people like that, don't they just, get killed?
That's the one people say to me, well, why aren't you a scamster? And I'd be too afraid. I mean, there's a tax lawyer by the name of Max Green who was running a pyramid scheme and ripped off in the order of $50 million, and they found him murdered in a hotel room in Cambodia. That was only a few years ago.
Yes.
And
risky business.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they call me Chicken Richard for a good reason.
So, and Helen, you're with the Skeptics for a short time, been reading for a little while. Is there any sort of subject matter that appeals to you particularly, something that you think?
Yeah, well, I think because I used to work in magazines, I'm really interested in the kind of things that appear in women's magazines all the time, just almost as facts. You've got all these psychics down the back of the magazine, and you can write in with your problems, and you can ask about your career or your relationship, and this psychic will give you all these answers.
Yeah.
And I just find it really sad that people won't go to, a counsellor or someone that they can talk to about their problems, or even talk to their partner, or get some genuine advice on their life. And instead will just write to someone in a magazine who can't possibly have any knowledge of their life. And the other area that I think really concerns me is all these alternative therapies. You know, when Richard were talking earlier about people who are really ill, people who have serious health problems, and instead of going for scientifically proven treatment, will instead go for some natural therapy, which they think has to be good because it's natural. And there are people who are dying and people who are suffering unnecessarily. And there was a really sad case recently where a little baby died because the parents didn't have, the scientific, the medical treatment done, and instead went to a naturopath. And I just think that's really sad.
Yeah, well, so do you think they felt like the normal medicine couldn't help them and they went there, or they've just sort of instantly thought that there's some magical cure?
Well, it seemed like they didn't give normal medicine a try.
A chance.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, especially with, like, say, with the heart, I mean, surgeons can actually put a knife in and cut your chest open and fix you up. And yet other people think, oh no, I can just lay my hands on you. Yeah. Or just drink this little herbal potion.
Yeah, it's quite amazing. I mean, there've been all these advances in science this century, and it's so sad when people aren't taking advantage of that. People live so much longer now and live so much healthier lives because of these advances in science. And when people try and go back to something, some sort of therapy that was invented, 100 years ago, 150 years ago, and just ignoring everything that scientists have learnt, it's just, it just seems a waste.
We're fools, aren't we? We're just a whole bunch of idiots. Human beings, they're just idiots.
Crazy. But the thing is, natural therapies sound good because you hear that it's natural and you think that has to be good. If it's natural, it has to be good for me. It can't hurt me. And often these things don't hurt in the same way that surgery does or chemotherapy.
Yeah, right.
That's because they're not doing anything.
That's right.
They're not helping you.
And they can hurt you because there's a lot of poisons in nature too.
Well, arsenic is natural and so is bird droppings.
Exactly. So are volcanoes. You can jump into a volcano. That's natural heat treatment. Yeah, well, that's all pretty good. Well, I think we might even... You want to stick around for another song?
Love to.
Yeah, why not? Well, I think we can uncover a bit more in this whole skeptical thing. I'll play another tune. This is Linkin Park with Crawling, and the world is crawling with suckers. The world is crawling with charlatans. Linkin Park. Linkin Park there with Crawling. I'm here with Richard Led and Richard Saunders and Helen Vanook, playing musical chairs in the studio here on Net FM. We've got the two Richards here now with two mics and two Richards talking. We got they're from the Australian Skeptics Inc. and they've got a new CD out. Tell us about that.
This CD is a compilation of the last 20 years of the Skeptical Journal, The Skeptic. It has every issue, plus a couple of other books thrown in for good measure, and it's fully searchable. You can look up your favourite topic, be it iridology or spoon bending or reflexology, wonderful things, or you look up a famous name or anything you like. It'll find the page and you can read all about it, print it out, use it in your latest argument. And that CD will be available probably for Christmas, and people can certainly find out about it on our website.
Excellent. So if your brother, cousin, mother has just racked up a $10,000 phone bill ringing psychics, you could probably buy them a CD for Christmas.
I would certainly recommend it.
Highly recommend it. Now, science tends to be... science is moving ahead in leaps and bounds, and even some of the science journals are starting to say that there is a bit of magic in science. What do you say to that?
Well, when you read quantum physics or whatever, it's incomprehensible to normal minds. It certainly sounds like magic.
But we're figuring out more and more, aren't we?
Well, that's right. And there's nothing magic. We're discovering new things all the time. And this is one of the criticisms that's thrown at skeptics groups. They say, well, look, scientific knowledge is doubling every 8 years or whatever it is now. How can you say with certainty that there aren't any ghosts out there, etc.? And the answer is, well, how come they've never been detected? People say they've seen a ghost, and it's inevitably mistaken identity, it's a waking dream, or it's a good old-fashioned hoax because we all love a joke.
Yeah. Now, one thing that has got me a little bit is I saw this show on TV once that was about the pyramids and how there's these 3 sets of pyramids in Cambodia, Egypt and Mexico, and they're all set up as if there's no way these people from way back 5,000 years ago would have known those measurements.
That's a really big insult on the ancestry of a lot of those people of today, the Egyptians or the Mayan civilization, whoever. basically saying to these people, your ancestors were so stupid as human beings, they could not construct these things, therefore...
Oh, no, not to construct them. No, there's something about that they're actual, that where they're pointing and that they've calculated all this scientific stuff.
Well, you could probably do that with the Eiffel Tower, Centrepoint Tower here in Sydney, any other famous building in the world. Choose 3 of them, you'll find connections.
Yeah, that's true.
You just have to look, they'll be there.
Yeah, there's always connections, aren't there? Mm. You know what? Yeah, one thing I hate is when people say it was meant to be. Does that really get to you? It gets to me. Yeah, people say, I bumped into this guy on the street the other day. It was meant to be.
It's very hard to argue.
Who meant it to be?
I think we're meant to be here right now, that's all.
Yeah, I think we are. This is a magical moment right here. We're all at Net FM. We're talking on the internet. There's all this amazing stuff bounding around the ether.
That either proves there is a God or it proves there isn't a God, depending upon your prejudice to start with.
So do you tend to be... of course, you're looking at logical, critical thinking. Have you got a part of you that says, well, one day something might come up, and if it does, I'll believe it, or I just know that it never will, and I'll never believe it?
We'd never say that, and one of the reasons we have our $100,000 challenge there is, wouldn't it be fabulous if we were part of the discovery of a whole new branch of science?
Absolutely.
It'd be worth $100,000.
It'd be worth 10 times that, wouldn't
it? Exactly.
And isn't the James Randi?
James Randi in the United States.
He's offered $1 million?
$1 million.
$1 million US, so the two combined prizes are close to, or more than, $2 million Australian dollars tax-free. So come on, psychics and clairvoyants. And
we're waiting.
And if you know any psychics and clairvoyants, why don't you ask them to take our challenge, and you will get $20,000 tax-free.
20 grand spotter's fee. You can't get that as a drug dealer, can you? You dob in Bin Laden, you get Bin Laden, you probably only get about 15 grand.
This is far safer than dobbing in Bin Laden.
That's pretty good. Yeah, okay. Well, it's been great having you here, Helen. Richard is going to bend a spoon.
Now, I don't know how this is going to go over on radio, but I've got a little teaspoon here, and Stefan can verify that's...
Yeah, maybe you can tap it on the desk very lightly. Oh, listen to that. Whoa. It's a real spoon. It's solid.
Now, spoon bending is largely an optical illusion. So if I wiggle it like that between my fingers, you think you can see some movement in the spoon.
He's wiggling. The spoon's moving.
It's a very strong effect. And the more I do that, the more you think it's actually starting to move.
Unbelievable.
And if I shake it like this and I get my friend Richard to hold out his hand...
Oh, my God.
And the metal melts... And
hallelujah. That's magic.
Falls in two.
He's just bent and snapped a spoon in two.
Richard, can I now claim the $100,000?
I'll give it to you. Can I get my spotter's fee? I brought this guy in here today. Richard Saunders just bent a spoon.
The trouble is, we know how he did it. The two ways you can do it. You can do it the way the magicians do it, or you can do it the way Uri Geller does it, using the power of his mind. The trouble with Uri Geller doing it with the power of his mind is he's really doing it the hard way.
Yeah,
so it's easier to use trickery.
Trickery is much better, isn't it?
It is. It looks better too.
I was impressed there. In fact, I am a believer now. I'm sorry, guys. You know, all this 20 years of work, this CD, it's just out the window here. I believe.
Stefan, I've got a bridge for sale for you for only a few $1,000s, and you'll collect $1 million in toll money every day.
You take credit cards?
Yes. And you get frequent flyer points.
Have you got like a 1-900 number I can call with some information about it?
$5.45 per minute.
Oh, wonderful.
We'll just put you on hold.
Okay, well, we're going to go from the ridiculous to the even more ridiculous. This is M with Pop Music. Remember that one? What a classic song. We're here on Net FM. The Skeptics Inc. have been with us. I hope you've enjoyed their little appearance here and the spoon bending. Oh, you should have been in the studio. It happened. It was real. I believe. We'll see you again.
We take you now to a conversation being shouted across a hillside.
What?
I said I'm trying to come up with a promo for this podcast.
What podcast?
The Geologic Podcast.
What?
The Geologic Podcast.
Oh, Harab's pointless meanderings, sceptical observations, ridiculous musical interludes, and not a hint of geology.
Well...
Alright, maybe a little bit of geology, but it's not worth it.
Come on, he's got the religious moron of the week. Geo's Bob reads Jay-Z lyrics.
Pointless.
Ask George.
Oh, who cares what the bastard thinks?
Interesting fodder.
Oh, great.
The horoscopes.
Garbage.
Not the Bible.
Boring garbage.
Misinformed science.
Stupid garbage.
True adventures of the Philadelphia Funk Authority.
Ooh, white Ukrainian boy playing drums in a funk band. Must be fascinating.
What, none of that is appealing?
Not even a wee bit.
Great. Don't tune in then.
I won't.
Fine.
Fine.
Great.
Great.
Fine.
Great.
Great.
You said that already.
The Geologic Podcast. Pointless, but free. GeologicPodcast.com.
Now it's time for Dr. Rachie Reports with Dr. Rachael Dunlop.
Hello listeners and welcome to Dr. Rachie Reports. This week is a very special episode where I give you a wrap-up of the Shorty Awards. This is the Shenanigans, the Subterfuge and the Shorty Awards. So, on Wednesday, March the 3rd, the Shorty Awards were announced in New York City. I was unable to attend the ceremony even though I would have been delighted. I love New York City. So instead, I settled in front of my computer at work at 11 a.m. Australian time to watch the live stream. The categories were announced in alphabetical order, so it wasn't long before we reached the health category, my category. Now, the Shorties are affectionately known as the Twitter Oscars, which is actually quite accurate since none of the nominees know if they have won before the ceremony. Further, the Shorties are not won purely on votes alone. A panel of judges makes the final decision following an initial round of nominations to select 6 finalists, and then there's a secondary voting round. So as I watched the awards being handed down, it became apparent that those who had won the voting round were not automatically winning the final round. Some finalists had come from 3rd or 4th place to take out the trophy. So you can imagine I was decidedly nervous. So it was with great relief that I heard my name announced as the winner of the health category. Now, some of you very perceptive listeners have observed that I've remained very quiet during the entire Shorties process. Now, I did not blog about it, I only occasionally asked for votes, and I rarely tweeted about it except to say thanks when I had won a round, because you guys are awesome. And there was a reason I made this decision, and some of you might have worked out why. Well, it was because the alt metas running in this category behaved so badly throughout this process that all I had to do was sit back and watch them self-destruct. It was much better for me to say nothing, quietly screen capture their abuse and ad hominem attacks, and wait for it all to crumble around them, which it did eventually. As Steve Novella advised me when the "She's a Fatty" post appeared on Macola's site, we've been waiting for years for them to cross the line from their world of unicorns, sunbeams and fairy dust to their apparent true colours of personal insults and crazy antics. And Joseph Macola and Mike Adams did it in spectacular style. All I had to do was sit back and wait and let other people document the carnage. So let's recap a little, shall we? It all started when Mike Adams from Natural News was coming first in the health category and Dr. Macola second. At this stage, I was somewhere down near 16th place when I alerted my Twitter followers to the competition. My mate and all-round awesome smart guy Jason Brown decided he would have none of that and instigated a campaign to get me to the top position. Amongst other things, he alerted PZ Myers of the hugely successful Pharangula blog, who is known for his ability to pharangulate. Now, PZ kindly blogged about the competition, and this was when things began to get interesting. Firstly, my position was elevated to the top 5, and increasing when Mike Adams got wind that a big pharma drug pusher was threatening his top spot. In fact, at this time I wasn't even winning, but this didn't matter to Mike, so he wrote a long post on his website asking his followers to vote for him to keep me out of the top spot. Well, it seems they did vote for Mike, but we started to notice some abnormalities with their votes. Many people, including Tim Farley and at WheezeMGK, did a quick audit and found that many of the votes for Adams were coming from newly created Twitter accounts, which were clearly set up explicitly to vote for Mike in health and also for me in quackery. So some of the accounts contained only 2 tweets, one vote for me in quackery and one for Mike in health. WheezeMGK also did an audit on 160 votes when Adams had a total of 530 and found that 104 were invalid. That's 65%. That's a lot. Now, tweeting votes from new accounts was explicitly against the rules, which stated that only Twitter accounts which were established and active prior to the competition start date on January 1, 2010 were eligible to place votes. So next thing we knew, not only did the health ranger have votes taken from him, he was completely disqualified from the competition. And this was when it started to get interesting. Mike Adams threw an epic tantrum. He threw his toys out of the pram, he hand-flapped, he foot-stamped, he wrote a frothing rant about how the competition was rigged. He even threatened to sue the judging panel. And he wrote this to the organisers. If you allow this to continue, the integrity of the entire Shorty Awards will be destroyed. I had hoped this would be a fair, honest competition that highlights the usefulness of short-form content. But thanks to the rogue voters who are supporting Dr. Rachael Dunlop, the Shorty Awards are quickly becoming a platform for defamation and false accusations, where those who can spread the most aggressive insults are allowed to win. He then wrote a truly epic post on naturalnews.com entitled What Skeptics Really Believe. Many of you would have seen this. It's been discussed extensively within the community. But if you missed it, I recommend you read a couple of the takedowns. Orac over at Respectful Insolence described the post as a pyromaniac in a field of straw men or black hole of burning stupid incinerating every straw man in the universe. Phil Plate described it as alt med guy whacked with the shorty end of the stick. And Steve Novella at Neurologica also took it to pieces. The following day, Mike Adams responded with another post referring to hate speech from jackals who attack natural medicine. All up, he wrote about 4 ranting posts about skeptics, filled with conspiracy theories and references to Big Pharma. My personal favourite was the claim that skeptics believe that the water in your toilet is the same as the water from a mineral spring. Okay. Adams got so angry on his Facebook page that some of his followers suggested that his computer had been hacked. Not so, I'm afraid. He really is that nasty. Many people covered Adams' public tantrums, but I especially enjoyed the analysis by the Merseyside Skeptics on their Skeptics with a K podcast. I recommend you have a listen. So now it was McCullough's turn to throw his toys out of the pram. He posted an acerbic rant on his Facebook page, pleading with his followers to vote for him by insulting me. It was entitled, Need Your Help to Squash Drug Company Pushers, and he said, an arrogant group of science bloggers that have vilified me for the past few years have started a campaign to have an Australian shill to win a health award on Twitter. This overweight non-physician has arrogantly bashed nearly every alternative therapy and encourages reliance on drugs. She is Big Pharma's wet dream. The ad hominem attacks became decidedly more charming until some of his followers began to question his motives and behaviour. On his Facebook page, fans left comments like, I'm doubting Dr. McCullough wrote this post himself. It just doesn't sound professional at all. And, very unprofessional post. I think this type of post puts you in a bad light. And this, name-calling and references to dreams. Who wrote this article? A high school student? Overweight people are members of your site learning how to be healthy too. And your choice of words in this post speaks volumes about your character. I personally choose not to respect a professional who uses this terminology in a professional webpage. Goodbye. Suffice it to say, the little-known reference in his post might have been accurate before the Streisand effect multiplied my Twitter followers by a huge amount and traffic to my website doubled overnight. All thanks to McCullough putting my URL on his website with the comment, if you want a real laugh to see how ridiculous some of her positions are, you can go to her site. Thank you, Joe McCullough. Interestingly, all the while McCullough was ranting and railing about me and pleading with his fans to vote and ask 3 friends to vote, he was simultaneously dismissing the Shorties as just a stupid popularity contest. He said, now I could care less about this stupid Twitter award. It's absolutely meaningless in the broad scope of what is going on in health. But the award can be viewed as a metaphor and is a fight with those that would literally destroy everything we know and love about natural healing. As the voting round continued, things began to get difficult for us. Remember, Macola.com is one of the largest natural health websites in the world, and at the time he had 64,000 fans on Facebook. He even claimed to have emailed 2.5 million people pleading with them to vote for him. At one stage, his votes went from 600 less than me to overtake me by more than 2,000 in the space of only a few hours. At this stage, I thought we might have lost it. But as soon as they appeared, the Shorties removed the votes. It doesn't matter how many fans you have, if they can't read the rules, their votes won't count. Of course, as you can predict, as his votes began to disappear, his fans accused me of having some kind of influence over the Shorties, called me a cheat, a fraud, and a liar, amongst other things. I began to get votes in these categories, and meanwhile my fans were much more creative, nominating Macola for the mythical half-fish, half-drink category, a category which he took out comfortably, I am happy to say. And as the deadline for the voting round drew closer, I asked Tim Minchin to ask his 50,000 plus followers to vote for me, which he very kindly did. Interestingly, in contrast to when PZ tweeted it, this kind gesture from Tim Minchin did not translate into many more votes. Clearly PZ has his fans much better trained. So listeners, it all ended on Wednesday, and so far there has not been a mumble from the Adams or Macola camps. What began as a fight for our principles of science and evidence ended as an incredibly interesting insight into the minds of believers who, when challenged and in lieu of any evidence to support their claims, simply run behind the shelter shed and call me fat. On a positive note, to my surprise and delight, there has been a huge amount of mainstream media coverage of the awards, probably because news aggregator AFP picked up the story. In Australia, my name even appeared in many of the headlines of the articles, and others described an Aussie biologist honoured for tweeting. My sister learned of the award from Brisbane Commercial Radio, who ran it as a news item, and the free afternoon newspaper called MX, which is distributed to over 700,000 commuters in Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane, ran the story on page 2 in Sydney and page 4 in Melbourne. There are also many other sites that covered the story. So that's it for the Shorty Awards report. A big pharma thank you to all my supporters and all who voted for me throughout the process. And I guess this little-known non-physician is not so little-known anymore. So if Macola is right, that this award can be viewed as a metaphor and is a fight with those that would literally destroy everything we know, then science has won. To reiterate my acceptance speech, this award recognises the value of sharing evidence-based health information on Twitter. For science, reason and critical thinking, thank you. Good manners doesn't hurt either. And until next time, this has been Dr. Rachie Reports.
So that's why you can't eat it. I was just talking to the students here. Now look, I'm supposed to tell you about something. The Cosmic Tea Party, a new science podcast. Podcast? The hell is that? At any rate, it's about science and mathematics. Sounds rather dull. Oh, hang on. It says here, not dull. Well, so there you have it, the Cosmic Tea Party podcast. www.cosmicteaparty.org. Or search for them on iTunes.
Grain of salt. Grain of salt. Grain of salt.
Let's all take this with a grain of salt. Here's Eran Segev.
Grain of salt now. Grain of salt, you gotta take it with a...
This is Eran Segev from Australian Skeptics and the Skeptic Zone podcast with the story of Praagh, a small town 380 kilometres west of Sydney. Monday, the 21st of July 1969, was a very special day for Praagh. While most of the world remembers the first landing on the moon as having happened on the 20th of July, the time difference between Australia and the US means that when the Eagle landed in the Sea of Tranquility at 4:18 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, it was 6:18 a.m. of the following day at Praagh. The reason that event has a special meaning for Praagh is that it is host to a 64-meter radio telescope which played an important role in that momentous event. Two members of the Praagh team who were there during the crucial hours in 1969 are Neil Fox Mason, who was responsible for driving the telescope, and Cliff Smith, who was in charge of telescope maintenance. Neil and Cliff agreed to share some of their experiences with me. The radio telescope at Parkes is operated by the CSIRO, Australia's Scientific and Industrial Research Organisation. It started operations in 1961 as the brainchild of Taffy Bowen, the chief of CSIRO's Radio Physics Division, and was headed by John Bolton, a legendary radio astronomer. To this day, it is one of the largest radio telescopes in the world. In the southern hemisphere, it is only surpassed by Tidbinbilla near Canberra in Australia and Arecibo in Puerto Rico, which is not a movable dish. In the mid to late 1960s, the Parkes dish became part of NASA's Deep Space Network. Fox Mason explains why Parkes was chosen to be involved with Apollo 11.
We had tracked different flights at different times, but Tidbinbilla was the main NASA tracking station down in Canberra, and it was a smaller dish. Why they got Parkes for the Apollo 11 was because of the television pictures and things coming back, and we got a greater collecting surface. We were the biggest steerable dish in the southern hemisphere at the time.
At the time of the moon landing, the tracking station communicating with Apollo 11 was Goldstone in California. As is now well known, the original plan was for Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin to sleep for 6 hours before preparing for the EVA. This would have seen them leave the LEM about 10 hours after landing, by which time the moon would have been under the horizon for Goldstone, and Parkes would have been tasked with receiving the TV transmission from the first human steps on another world. Fox Mason describes the preparations at Parkes.
First up at about 11:30, we tipped the dish over, and just to check the receivers were working okay and pointing was correct, we went and calibrated on one of the radio sources that was particularly well known at the time, Hydra A. And then we calibrated checked our pointing, the calibration of the receivers. Then after that, we spent about an hour on that, I suppose, and then we got into position and tipped the dish right down so to be pointing at the horizon. So we're at a very vulnerable position, tipped right over the 60 degrees waiting for the moon to rise.
As it turned out, Neil and Buzz were not in the mood for sleep. No prizes for guessing why, and asked for permission to go ahead with the EVA immediately. Permission was granted and they started preparing. For Parkes, this looked like all the hard work they had put in anticipation of the landing would come to naught. However, Aldrin and Armstrong took longer than expected to prepare for the EVA. Fox Mason recalls.
They were going to have a sleep and then come later on in the day, but once they got there they were too excited. They wanted to get out there as quickly as they could, but then they had trouble depressurising their spaceship and getting their spacesuits on, so by the time they were ready, Parkes was just about ready as well.
The delay meant that 6 hours later, the astronauts were still not quite ready to step out of the LEM, and time was running out for Goldstone. Unfortunately, the moon had not yet risen at Parkes, but there was still time to go before the EVA. Meanwhile, on the ground, the weather took a turn for the worse. July is the middle of winter in Australia, and as everyone was waiting for the EVA, the wind around Parkes picked up. This was particularly bad news as the dish was at its maximum tilt of 60 degrees in order to receive the signal from the moon as soon as it rose. Cliff Smith was outside in the wind, and he tells his story.
We didn't expect what happened, but it did for 20 minutes of the first observing period. It blew and a squall hit us, and it was in fact where I was out the back of the telescope to make sure that everything stayed that way, as good as it was, because as you well know, that telescope is one of the best sails you ever saw.
And he was not in a position for this kind of storm, was it?
It was not. It blew in from the west, and unfortunately we were pointing east.
As Cliff said, under normal circumstances, the dish, a 64-metre sail weighing 300 tons, would not be allowed to be subjected to such winds, which were in excess of 100 kilometers per hour, without being aimed at the zenith and anchored, as there was a real risk of catastrophic failure. However, these were not normal circumstances, and John Bolton and Taffy Bowen decided to take the risk. As the moon was approaching the horizon and the astronauts were getting ready to leave the LEM, the wind subsided. At 12:54 p.m. local time, just as the moon rose over the horizon at Parkes, and John Bolton managed to get a signal on the off-axis receiver, Aldrin activated the TV signal. Fox Mason was not watching, as he was busy tracking the signal.
No, I wasn't able to watch at the time because I was too busy engrossed in my own task, keeping the dish pointed in the right area.
Can you tell us how the physical tracking was done? How did you know you were pointing in the right direction?
Well, we had sets of coordinates that NASA had sent us, and then we'd checked all the positions, found them okay, and then we had a voltmeter up on top of the desk so we could see when we were getting the strongest signals all the time.
So basically every time the signal got a bit weaker, you moved in the direction that you thought was right?
Moved it, a little bit one way or the other, either in azimuth or declination to peak up on the best signal.
The signal was also picked up by the 64-metre dish at Goldstone and by the 26-metre dish at Honeysuckle Creek near Canberra. For a few minutes, NASA alternated between the signals in search of the best picture. But after 9 minutes, the moon was high enough over the horizon for the signal to be received by the main detector at Parkes, and for the rest of the moonwalk, the Parkes transmission was used. Naturally, those who were involved in the moon landing have an opinion about the moon landing hoax believers, so I asked Fox and Cliff what they thought of the conspiracy theorists. Fox Mason recalls a visit by Phil Plait in 2004, a visit which I was lucky enough to be part of.
There was an author come up here, a skeptic mob at Philip Platt.
Phil Plait, yes.
He wrote he made a good book about bad astronomy and all the rest of it.
Yes.
I mean, a lot of people still think it was made in Disneyland, and we've never been to the moon. But I don't know what we've got to do to convince them. A lot of people just never convince them of anything unless they can see and touch it themselves. And that's the nature of human beings, I suppose.
Cliff Smith, in turn, offers the best evidence he can that Neil and Buzz really walked on the moon.
Well, as a matter of fact, I'm led to believe, and I'm sure this happened, was the fact that we pointed the telescope at the moon, and we got a signal. Not only once, but we got a signal on the offset aerial, and we got a signal on the main aerial. And if they set that from the Mojave Desert, as those clouds say, we must have somebody must have been up there to have an echoing chamber or something like that. We received a signal from the moon, as all I know.
There's a lot more to tell about the dish at Parkes. For more information and the full story, go to www.parkes, that's parkes.atnf.csiro.au/news_events/Apollo 11. To hear the full interviews with Fox Mason and Cliff Smith, go to the website of the Skeptic Zone podcast, www.skepticzone.tv.
Grain of salt now. Grain of salt, you gotta take it with a...
Want to know how to live skeptically and still have friends? Well, so do I. Join me for Actually Speaking, a new podcast that explores the human side of skepticism. We'll set the science aside and discuss familiar skeptical topics from an interpersonal perspective. Along the way, we'll highlight specific social and communication skills needed to promote critical thinking. Scientific facts are only part of the equation. Let's take an extra step and learn how to share that knowledge effectively. Actually Speaking, a podcast that explores the human side of skepticism, critical thinking, and the skills we need to make it through the day. Visit actuallyspeaking.com to learn more.
James Van Praagh, the psychic, the medium, the man who can contact the dead. The inspiration for The Ghost Whisperer? He's back in Australia. I think he probably comes over here every year. He probably goes to many countries every year to do his live show. And of course, this is something that the tabloid TV just love to snap up. So, the other morning, James Van Praagh was a guest on the Sunrise program. It's a program I appear on occasionally as the, dare I say, token skeptic. This time, James Van Praagh did a live reading for us on this morning television program. I'll play this clip from it now. Just bear in mind that when the segment started, we saw James Van Praagh and the lady in question both walking in to the studio.
Oh. So, yes. So, do you want me to start?
Yes.
Well, Amelia, first of all, your husband is here very, very much so. He's a big man, by the way. He has a very big heart, very loving man. And I do see that his head also was involved when he passed. So, there was a crushing of the head when he passed. And I got to tell you, that was happening very, very fast. He didn't realize he was going to go somewhere. I don't know if he ever drove a truck, or was there a truck anywhere involved, because he was in a truck. And I want to ask about cattle, because suddenly I'm seeing cattle everywhere. What the heck is this about cattle?
We're from the country.
Okay, I'm seeing cattle. So I know he drove a cattle truck, but I'm seeing cattle. I tell you that I feel this man was very spiritual in his own way. And do you have his cowboy boots?
Yes.
What's this issue about cowboy boots?
Well, he loved horses and he rode horses.
But you have his boots. Do you have some boots of his?
I've got lots of his boots, his riding boots.
Okay, because something about the boots that you must have been looking through the closet. You must have been looking through them and looking at his boots because he was watching you do that. Also, cleaning out the drawers or cleaning out some stuff. You can't let yourself do it yet. It's too early, he said. That's okay. I want to say April, the month of April, is very significant. And that's what he's telling me. He's with you all the time. There's a wedding coming up. And there's the four children, 3 girls, 1 boy.
Cool. 3 boys,
3 boys, 1 girl. I know it's 3 of one, 3 of the... And there's a wedding coming up, or he's going to be there at a wedding, so be aware of that. You might not be aware of it yet, but there's a wedding coming up. There's also a second place that you go to with him. So I don't know if there was a getaway you used to go to, a holiday place, vacation, or somewhere. This is a little location. He loves this. And there's water. There's a lake, or there's a water area. And he wants to remember that. And he said, there's a memory you have there of the experience you had at that place, and that's how we want you to think of him. And he's never far away. And there's a picture of him right next to the bed. There's a photograph right at the bed, right looking at you. He kisses you good night every night. You feel him every night you go to sleep. And you know it. I mean, you're very aware, you're very spiritual, and he's the same way.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, this is a reading within seconds, so you imagine...
Amelia, is that pretty spot on?
Yes. Yeah.
Did you drop a knife the other day when you were cleaning the dishes? Did you drop some utensil on the floor? He said he was watching you pick this up. There was a knife you dropped on the floor or something, a knife or fork, and you picked it up.
Yes, I nearly cut my toe off.
You nearly cut your toe off.
Really? How can you say that?
He just showed me it. He showed me her just dropping the knife, and he actually had to pick it up. And he was watching her. He was her all the time.
Now, wasn't that amazing? Wasn't that just incredible? How could James Van Praagh be so right in what he said about this woman? I think, this is just a guess, mind you, a shot in the dark, I think the clue is that he walked into the studio with the woman before the segment started. Can it be, in your wildest imaginings, can it be that he actually spoke with her before they did the taping? Can it be? Can it be that he knew lots about her from letters or other correspondence before? I mean, was she plucked from the street? I wonder. Okay, to be fair to James Van Praagh, let's put him in a situation where he really didn't know the people he was about to read. Now, this is a clip from a show called The Circle, which is much like The View, the American show The View. Let's see how James Van Praagh goes this time.
Ghosts in the unknown, and we're going to throw it open to you with our studio audience now. Take it away and see what you can see.
Okay, sweetheart, great. I'd like to start with this lady right here who's sitting right in the first row. I have a mother figure, very strong, coming around you, okay? And with the name of either Mary, Margaret, do you understand the name? Margaret Mary. Okay, Margaret Mary. And I got to tell you that I feel before she passes over, though, there's a lot of hard time to walk or hard time to get up and get things going. Do you understand that? And also a hard time. Did medicines before she passed?
Well, she was on medication. But
that's what I'm asking.
She didn't have any painkillers.
Right, but there were medications she took because I feel this very, very much before when she's coming in here. And I feel some arthritis, by the way. There's a lot of arthritis, and there's a bone problem. There's also something with the back. So I don't know if she used to sit and have a pillow with the back of her, or is that you?
No.
No? That doesn't make sense to you? Okay, and what about trouble with the legs?
No.
Okay, who has trouble with the legs now?
Well, my father's had 2 hip replacements.
2 hip replacements. He cannot walk as well as he used to.
Oh, no, he walks very well.
Okay. Right. Was your mother buried?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Because she's talking about being buried and about an wake, or a funeral, rather. And she knows about it. She was very surprised by it all. And who's Kathy, or Kathy? Is there Catherine, or Kathy? Catherine or Kathy? Oh, she's talking about that.
Kate.
You know about this name?
Well, Kate.
Katie.
Who's that?
I have a cousin now that's just
passing.
surgery.
Right now?
Come with me today, but she just had to have surgery.
Let's talk about her, and she's praying with her, okay? I also know who's Catholic, but there's someone who's Catholic background. And
we all are.
You all are, okay.
Yeah.
So there was a mass said for her, and she wants to thank you for a mass that was said, and there are prayer cards that are said. There's a picture of Mother Mary somewhere around. Picture of Mother Mary. Would you know about this? You know about this. Picture
well,
of Mother
all
Mary.
Catholics have Mother Mary around somewhere.
Good, okay, well, I don't.
You know.
But, of course, that was years ago.
That still goes on.
But Nola's mother's name is Mary, and Nola's mother died when Nola was only 6.
Oh, okay.
That was in 1950.
Mm-hmm.
Do you go backwards?
I do go backwards. I go backwards, forwards, sideways also. So I want to talk about something else with you, though. I said music. I don't know why about music. Did you not do music? Were you going to do music when you were younger and you stopped doing music?
No.
Okay, you never wanted to play the piano?
No.
Okay, who was that one to play the piano or music?
I don't know.
Don't know.
No
okay.
one in my family's musical.
I want to talk about this lady here. Your husband's passed over, or your father's passed over, rather.
Father
passed over. I don't know if he liked cars. Don't know anything about cars, but there's something about cars with him. I mean, told me about this. Okay. I don't know if he just recently got a car, or there was talk about getting a car, or changing a car. Are you living or dead? Do you understand? Do you understand about the cars?
No.
Did you just get a car, or were there?
No.
No.
Okay. For a couple of years.
Okay. Who had the heart problem?
Possibly my mum.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. She's passed over as well?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Did you know if there was a heart situation before she passes?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and there was a situation that she was going to either get an operation or a procedure done, something before that, okay? So I don't know if you know that she didn't get that. I also want to ask, I don't know who I'm with Teresa or Terry, but I am. Okay, I got to tell you that.
Sorry, what did you say?
Teresa or Terry.
Teresa?
Mm-hmm. Teresa or Terry. And was there a divorce with you? Never. You never married?
No.
Okay. I'm not surprised. Because I want you to love yourself more. Because you don't. And I need you to love yourself more. Okay? I also want you... There's something about the car here with your father. I don't know, but I'm talking about a car here. I don't know what it means. If you're just getting a new car, or you got a new car, but there's something with that. Okay? I got to tell you that. I'm going to come over here to this lady.
Well, as James Van Praagh would be the first to say, it doesn't work all the time. He's not 100% accurate.
Yeah, right, guys. I was talking to Richard Saunders the other day. All right. He said if we record a trailer for our podcast, Skeptics with a K, he'd play it on their show.
Oh, that's nice of him. That's very generous.
It's pretty good. I'm not sure what we could do, though. I mean...
Well, I suppose you tell people what the show's about.
But it's basically just this.
Yeah, but... Yeah, we talk about science and skepticism and things.
That's true. I suppose you mentioned the website address.
What, merseysideskeptics.org.uk?
Yeah, or just search us on iTunes. Oh, and then we could end with a big song like The Skeptics with a K podcast.
No. Don't do that.
So that's it for the Skeptic Zone episode number 72, and thank you for listening. If you're interested in seeing some of the media coverage that I got for the Shorty Awards, please head over to our reporter Kylie Sturgis's blog at podblack.com, where she's compiled some of the links to stories that covered the awards. Also, I'd like to thank everyone who's been generously donating to the show. It really does help us continue to give you a high-quality show every week. So, join me again next week, listeners, where we'll be back with a think tank and much, much more. This has been Dr. Rachie, signing off from Sydney, Australia.
You've been listening to The Skeptic Zone. Visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for comments, contacts, and extra video reports.
The Skeptic Zone.